I'm going to pass straight over to Jo, though, who will talk us through live sessions from her kitchen table. Jo, over to you.
Well, hello. That was really, really great. I enjoyed that loads. I'm desperately impressed. That was fantastic. So, as Fran said, my name's Jo. I'm head of learning at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. So you've got a bit of double Ashmolean today. It feels a bit kind of embarrassing. So I said Helen before lunch, and you've got me afterwards, but talking about different stuff. But it does link across. So before I start sharing a few slides, a very short presentation, I wanted to ask a question actually to the virtual room, and if you could pop your answers in the chat, I'd be really interested. So if you can cast your minds back long ago to a time before COVID, a time before lockdowns, a time before most of us, can't speak for all, but most of us had heard the word Zoom or Teams, back to that kind of time, to your various venues or places and spaces you were working. And I'm interested in what, if any, live learning programs were you offering? So live online learning programs, if you were offering any at all in any shape or form before that time. That's what I suspected, and that's the same for us. Oh, video conferencing, well done, Sean. So we were doing nothing around live learning sessions. Yeah, I'm just, don't be shy if you were doing it. Well done. Yeah, I think that's generally the case for most of us. Those of you who managed to get to Helen's presentation before lunch will know we were doing, like nearly everybody else, we were doing stuff on the website, a little bit of film, a little bit of audio, zoomable images, bits and bobs, and maybe using digital for on-site activity. We've got some iPads that we have from funding from something many moons ago, which are a bit knackered now, but we were doing stuff, but live streamed online stuff, zilch. So few little bits where people were doing it, but yeah, minimal. A Skype hello. Oh yeah, there we go. Miranda saying about her Skype hellos to schools she's working with. But so for most of us, complete novices. Second question before we move on to a little presentation is, how about now? So how about now? What has changed, if anything? So if you could put into the chat, if you are doing any live streamed online programs, whether for schools, families, adults, talks, workshops, anything at all, that would be really interesting to hear. I'm just very nosy, and it's sharing what we're all collectively doing. We're going to be talking about it from the Ashmolean, but it doesn't mean we're doing it, you know, right or wrong. It's just what we are doing, but it's nice to find out what other people are up to. Yeah, brilliant. Yay, loads of stuff. I mean, what I'm taking from that is when we're talking about developing skills and confidence, all of us, it's by the sound of it, have had to go from a bit of a standing start and to sort of gallop over the last 2 years quite spectacularly into doing a whole range of really creative, inspiring stuff. I've seen loads of phenomenal examples online. I'm very proud of what my team have done, but I'm really, really kind of excited by stuff we've seen other people doing as well. We've been learning from one another, which is going to be a bit of a theme from what I'm talking about, and has actually been a recurring thread through a lot of the stuff that people have been talking about today. I think Helen Adams was using that phrase of a community of practice, and I think that certainly is where most of our skills development has come from. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. Okay, so thank you. Loads of fantastic stuff. What I'm going to do with the presentation is to try and bang through it as quickly as possible. So it's bouncing across a whole range of things that are quite chunky in a very speedy way. But I think I'd rather do that and then give more time for questions and discussion rather than just talking about what we're doing, because actually what's interesting is what everybody's doing. Now, I'm going to do the fun part, which is always share my screen, which always makes me feel slightly queasy. So I'm, oh God, I pressed the wrong button already, which is a good start. Right. Talk amongst yourselves. Now, I'm hoping people can see something from Egypt. If you can't see something from Egypt, it really has gone horribly wrong. So what I'm going to talk about is our experience of live stream learning sessions, the sort of creating and broadcasting from kitchen tables, lofts, spare bedrooms. Now, I'm going to attempt to move my laptop. I'm working on a very diddy, very elderly MacBook Air, and with a little camera in the top. I'm going to move it around so you can actually see what I mean by the spare bedroom. All you see is my little face, and I'll try and decide what's behind me so it doesn't look too scary. But the reality is, I don't know if people can actually see. I'm going to try and put back to speaker video, but if you can't see me going on, then do sort of say, but can you actually see the room behind me as I'm moving it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my lovely workspace. So what I've got behind me are washing baskets, a carry mat, something to go to the charity shop, and a big pile of boxes and a guitar that doesn't work. And this is the reality of most of our kind of spaces for home learning, for home delivery and live streaming. And all of my team, we are still delivering our live streaming from home. So this isn't a as it was, it's an as it was and how it is. And I can talk a little bit more about the impact of that and my plans and thoughts for as we go forward. Okay, so next slide would be good. So what I'm going to talk about and share with you is our experience of what we did, what worked well, what worked less well, the sort of the challenges and problems. I know when I meant to say challenges, but sometimes they are a problem. So challenges and problems, what we learned, so what we essentially did about the challenges and problems that popped up, and then what next. So that's the sort of the way that I'll go forward through it. And I'm just putting a few little images of various bits along as we go. So the image that's in front of you here is a screenshot from our online events page. So all of our online public programs, so talks, workshops that would have been in the museum, is now online and is continuing online all the way through to Christmas, and then we'll see what we do in the new year. But that's what the shot, the picture is on screen. So what we did, well, for the first part of the sort of coronavirus experience, most of my team were furloughed. So we had a very minimal on-site team. Doesn't mean that people weren't thinking and exploring and attending training, the things you could do during furlough, but we weren't actively engaging or doing anything more concrete than that. So when people re-emerged from furlough, which was sort of in the sort of June, July, August time of 2020, first thing we did was we talked to people, and we talked to people who were out there in the wider world, our partners, friends, whether in schools or different organisations, and we talked to people within the sector. So talked about what people were doing, were being really nosy, were kind of asking questions. We attended training. So we went to Fran's, I think everybody's been to Fran's Jewish Museum training about virtual classrooms, but it was phenomenally helpful. Fran's was probably about the only training that we did unearth. I think we thought there was magical training that would cover all the stuff that we wanted to do. And we found that there wasn't. So what we did was we tried things out and we learned by doing. So we talked to people, learned from one another, learned from other people, that community of practice, and we developed our skills and confidence in that way. But at some point, one brave soul from our museum had to be the first person to press go and do a live session, and that person was Claire. So Claire is pictured on screen. Claire is our learning officer for early years to Key Stage 2, and in September 2020 she did our first live stream learning session to a primary school on Islamic art and design. So we created and are still delivering online programs for schools and colleges from early years to FE, families, including our Baby Ashmole session for parents and their babies, adults, adult groups, but also our public programme of talks and workshops, and trying to keep engagement with our community partners through various programmes and projects we might be doing. A bit more limited, but we try to keep some of that going. And we operated very much with a responsive model, particularly for the school side. So instead of learning staff creating things and hoping that people might want to come and take part, is what we did was start by designing sessions that people had asked for, which is why Islamic art and design was the first one. Not the most obvious, I must admit. You might think ancient Egypt, that did come very rapidly, but it was responding to what people were asking for, designing a session, and then those just added to our menu of stuff that was available. So what worked well? Well, it was popular. Lots and lots of people took part. I won't read through the numbers, they're sort of self-explanatory, but this is just a snapshot of some of the numbers in that 12-month period. So it was popular. I just point out on the right hand side is Rowan. Rowan is doing baby Ashmoles from her living room. This is a weekly workshop for babies and their grown-ups, which was via Zoom. And this is kind of Rowan utilising all her creativity with what she got at home, from shiny spoons to things from the kitchen cupboard, and commandeering a lot of her children's toys to create a sort of a learning, friendly learning space online. We also had really nice comments from people. I won't read everything out, but one of the bits I particularly loved was still enjoying learning at 82 and 86, which were people who were taking part in one of our online public programmes. Also, the person who's talking about you know, the online talks had lightened the lockdown gloom and taken them to a different world. And also the person talking about they really are wanting these to continue because they have family, they don't get into Oxford, and it's really difficult for them to access things in person. So the online is really positive for them. What also worked well was connecting with people. For us, being able to connect with the sort of partners and organisations and individuals that we worked with previously was really positive. And also really important for our team, for their own well-being, my team's well-being, to feel that we were being useful and doing something which was actually our job, teaching, learning, connecting, all of those kind of things that make people tick and why they came into this area of work. Is by doing the live stream, you were actually connecting and getting response. So it was a learning, a digital activity where you got instant response. So I share with you this picture of Claire. This is obviously a picture taken in a school of Claire beaming in. These are quite hard pictures to get hold of because teachers generally aren't taking photographs in their classroom. But Claire is getting immediate feedback from the young person, the girl who's talking to her on screen. So that was very positive. It also allowed us to retain existing audiences, so we kept that connection and those friendships, develop new audiences, people we never worked with before, often, you know, not just local but regional and international, and larger audiences. I share with you an example is that our lecture theatre on site seats 80 to 100 on a good day. Our online talks, generally 200, if not 300, 400, 500 people attending each time. It also allowed us to work differently and try new things. I know for Claire Coleman and Claire Corey, who's our learning officer for secondary and FE, the opportunity to try working in different ways. Sorry, just lost my bit of screen there. But to try working in different ways. So things like being able to do a whole school assembly, or beam into a lunchtime creative writing club, which is what Claire Corey, our secondary person, was able to do. Work with one object but focus on it in a different way. Jude, who's our learning officer for adults, Jude was doing, I don't know how they made it work, but a simulcast with 6 different residential homes across the southeast of England, talking about objects in the Ashmolean. So we were able to do things differently, and accessibility already, I think has been talked about a huge amount at various kind of sharing sessions, but online has increased access for a whole range of audiences, not for everybody, but for a lot of people it certainly has, and that's something we need to hang on to and retain. What worked less well, where technology sometimes goes wrong. I don't think I need to even expand on that. It just does. I was getting a bit hot and bothered because I lost the Zoom connection 5 minutes before I was meant to be joining you and had to reboot my laptop. They're the things that happen, and it makes all of us feel slightly hot and clammy. We're working on home Wi-Fi, hence why mine went wrong. Different home computer setups. None of my team are working on any Oxford University kit. We're all working on the varying types of kit we've got at home, and they vary. Some are very elderly, some have got very little storage. It's not sustainable, and we'll come on to that in the what next in a second. We haven't got the access to the same learning resources, so we've had to be kind of creative with what we make use of at home. But actually that's no bad thing, because it sort of mirrors what our audiences will also be accessing, rather than us coming in with a whole range of glamorous and exciting making things that we might have got in the cupboards at the museum. Is that people don't have that at home. So how we are kind of mirroring that is probably perhaps no bad thing. There's no budget. There was very little budget. We're a big museum, but the budget was, well, none. So it was working with what we had. No experience to begin with. Now we're really quite experienced. And the challenge of how we made online sessions interactive, social, and multi-sensory. So what we learned, we talk to people, and talk to people again. So sharing ideas, thinking, whether within the team or beyond the team, but people are supremely generous with their time and expertise, and that has been invaluable. Work with what you have. I would say that is absolutely key. There's no point in us kind of worrying and fretting about all the bits we could do, should do. We think, well, we've got this, and this is what we can work with. And it's amazing quite how creative you can be within that, as we've seen with, I think, everyone's presentations today. Acknowledging to ourselves that online is different to in person, not better, not worse, just different, and it allows different opportunities to be explored. Online can be sociable. We did sort of worked with a variety of ways to how we could achieve that. And there are sort of creative responses that we came up with. Don't have time to really expand on it now, but more than happy to talk more as we into the chat if we'd like to. And similarly, it is and can be interactive and multi-sensory. You just have to think about it in a different way. If I was trying to kind of shoehorn the on-site activities onto online, we would have had problems. But what we were trying to do, and my team I think did it brilliantly, was to think of it completely differently. These were new programs for a new platform and working in different ways and embracing the opportunities that presented. And then final bit is what we learned is that investment is needed to grow and develop. So we need that investment. And that takes us probably on to next, but one final, almost final slide, is that what next is the museum, the Ashmolean has got, or is, I think it's about being signed off by our sort of board of visitors, is a new digital content strategy. So that's looking at the creation of content and programming and what our strategic approach is across the entire museum. That's brilliant, because it's really kind of raising the profile. But a key strand of that is you need to allocate budget. If there isn't a budget line with money attached to it, then things just kind of can sink without a trace. It's not, we need to make sure it's embedded. So also my work, I think, moving forward is making sure that we've got a budget line allocated as part of core funding, and not as kind of free-floating projects where things can sort of come and go. Online programs are going to be part of our core offer, that they will be going forward. Quite what the flex will be between online and on site, we don't know. It kind of can ebb and flow, but that's the joy of it. We can kind of do more of one and then do more of the other, seeing how we go. We're also making a case for an on-site broadcast studio. Now that sounds very, very grand. Basically, it's a room where we can have a screen, 2 screens. I'd love to have 2 screens, a PC, decent lighting, microphone, overhead camera for doing kind of making activities, we need a designated space on site. Much more efficient than what's currently happening with my team is that, you know, we've had daft situation where someone's having to come into the museum in the morning, deliver an on-site session, then get in their car or the bus and then gallop back to their house to deliver an online session in the afternoon, because you can't deliver a live online session from a shared office. For safeguarding reasons, for quality issues, you can't sit in an office of 10 people beaming into a primary school classroom. So we need to look at how we do that. Portable kit is key. We have got some portable kit. Helen Adams will be aware of this. We've got some across various museums in Oxford, some resources that we can access, but that is key. So we can actually do stuff in the galleries and stream as well as in the studio space. And the need for ongoing staff training and development is sort of absolutely fundamental. It doesn't necessarily need to be formal training on a course, but keeping those skills up to date and making sure we give time for that, rather than expecting people to do it as an extra or at home or in their own time, is that we acknowledge that that's a key part of their job and need to give time to do that. So final couple of slides, I just share with you all the names and emails of the key people who've been delivering live online learning programs or public programs, and they know I put their names up, and they're more than happy to be contacted if people would like to after the session today. And final slide is that one, which is me. So you've got my email, Twitter, the Ash Learning sort of Twitter handle as well, and the direct links through to the learning pages and the events pages, which are a mixture of on-site and online. So yeah, there we go. It's a bit of gallop, but we've done it fairly speedily. But there may be lots of questions. There may not. But you know, do feel free to contact me either today or afterwards or any point down the line. I think that's the key bit of just keeping those kind of conversations going, sharing skills, sharing what worked, sharing what didn't. And certainly we would not be doing what we are doing at the moment without sort of the generosity of kind of colleagues across the entire sector, from sharing risk assessments, from talking about how they'd solve problems, and that's really how it evolves, is in that kind of culture. So thank you. I shall stop sharing.